Successful businessman uncovers the devastating truth of his wife's affair with his best friend. He consults with a top-notch divorce lawyer and begins to strategically plan his financial and legal moves to ensure their downfall. Julian, a tall, distinguished man in his mid-40s, always believed in hard facts and concrete evidence. As a successful businessman, he had built his empire on these principles. But nothing in his career of navigating corporate complexities could have prepared him for the personal betrayal that awaited him on an otherwise unremarkable Tuesday evening. He arrived home earlier than usual, the spring sun still casting long shadows across the opulent living room of the house he shared with his wife, Annabella. She was beautiful, with auburn hair that cascaded in waves over her shoulders, and a smile that once lit up his world. They had been the perfect picture of marital bliss, envied by their friends for the life they had built together. As Julian set down his briefcase, he noticed Annabella's phone buzzing on the kitchen counter. It was not like her to leave her phone unattended. Driven by an inexplicable urge, he picked it up, expecting a mundane message or a reminder. However, what he saw shattered his world into unrecognizable fragments. The phone displayed a series of messages from Harold, Julian's best friend since college. They were more than friends, they were brothers in arms, having supported each other through life's ups and downs. But the messages Julian read were not of friendship, they were intimate, explicit, and heart-wrenchingly personal. A photo attached to the latest message displayed Annabella and Harold in a compromising embrace, their nudity leaving no room for doubt or misunderstanding. Julian felt a coldness seep into his bones, a chill that came not from the spring breeze but from the icy grip of betrayal. His mind raced, memories flashing before his eyes, the late nights Annabella said she spent with her girlfriends, the weekend trips Harold made out of town, their laughter echoing a little too loudly during dinner parties. How could he have been so blind? The sound of a car pulling into the driveway snapped Julian back to reality. Annabella was home. He quickly placed the phone back on the counter, his mind a whirlwind of emotion. Anger, hurt, disbelief, and a haunting sense of loss battled within him. As Annabella entered, her smile faltered upon seeing Julian's ashen face. "Julian? What's wrong?" she asked, her voice laced with a concern that now seemed superficial. "Nothing," Julian replied, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "Just a long day at work." He couldn't confront her, not yet. He needed time to think, to plan. Julian was not a man who acted on impulse. He would handle this situation as he handled his business dealings, with precision and strategy. That night, as Julian lay in bed next to Annabella, her breath soft and even in sleep, he felt an insurmountable distance between them. The images on the phone burned in his mind, a stark reminder of the betrayal lying peacefully beside him. As the clock ticked towards dawn, Julian made a decision. He would not let this betrayal go unpunished. But his revenge would be calculated, legal, and devastating. Annabella and Harold would not see it coming, just as he hadn't seen their deceit. And so, amidst the silent shadows of the night, Julian's plan began to take shape. A plan of financial retribution that would leave no stone unturned, a plan that would ensure Annabella and Harold paid dearly for their unseen betrayal. The next few weeks saw Julian, a man once guided by trust and love, transform into a figure of meticulous calculation. He moved through his days with a stoic facade, his nights spent in silent planning. Julian knew that to confront Annabella and Harold directly would be to play a losing hand. He needed leverage, irrefutable evidence that would grant him the upper hand in the impending legal battle. He began by hiring a private investigator, a discreet professional known for his efficiency and secrecy. Julian provided him with all the necessary information: Annabella's daily routine, Harold's whereabouts, their social circles. He wanted details, evidence, something concrete that could not be dismissed in court. Simultaneously, Julian initiated a financial audit of his and Annabella's assets. His business acumen came into play as he meticulously reviewed bank statements, investment portfolios, and property holdings. He was preparing for the inevitable, a divorce that would not only dissolve their marriage but also dismantle the life they had built together. In his office, late at night, Julian sat surrounded by financial reports and legal documents. The walls that once echoed with laughter and discussions of future aspirations now resonated with the quiet intensity of his mission. He met with his lawyer, a sharp-minded woman named Ms. Carter, who specialized in high-profile divorce cases. She listened intently as Julian laid out his findings and his plans. "Revenge is a tricky business, Mr. Julian," Ms. Carter had cautioned. "It needs to be executed within the boundaries of the law. We must ensure that your actions are unimpeachable." Julian nodded in agreement. He didn't want mere revenge, he wanted justice, a vindication of his betrayal. Ms. Carter began preparing the groundwork for a divorce that would leverage Julian's financial acumen to secure the most advantageous outcome. Meanwhile, Julian's private investigator provided him with regular updates. Photos, messages, and even video footage, the evidence of Annabella and Harold's affair was indisputable. Each new piece of evidence was a blow to Julian's heart, but it also steeled his resolve. He stored everything in a secure, encrypted file, a digital arsenal for the upcoming legal battle. As the days passed, Julian's demeanor at home remained unchanged. He was cordial to Annabella, maintaining normalcy in their interactions. Annabella, seemingly oblivious to the storm brewing, carried on with her routine, unaware of Julian's knowledge and plans. Julian's transformation was not just emotional but also intellectual. He began studying legal strategies, familiarizing himself with divorce laws and asset protection. He knew that knowledge would be his most potent weapon in the ensuing battle. One evening, as Julian sat in his study, surrounded by the evidence of Annabella's betrayal, he realized that his love for her had been replaced by a cold, hard determination. He was no longer the man he once was, he was now a strategist, a planner, a man on a mission. The chapter closes as Julian, with a heavy heart but a clear mind, finalizes his preparations. The storm he had been gathering was ready to be unleashed. The stage was set for a confrontation that would change their lives forever, a reckoning that would echo far beyond the walls of their once happy home. The weeks turned into a strategic game for Julian, a game played behind the veil of normalcy. With each passing day, he wore the mask of a devoted husband while orchestrating the downfall of Annabella and Harold with a cold, detached precision. Julian's office became his war room. Here, amidst the leather-bound books and framed accolades, he plotted his next moves. He had always been a master of business strategy, but this was different. This was personal. Yet, Julian refused to let emotions cloud his judgment. He approached the situation with the same analytical mindset that had made him a formidable force in the business world. He met regularly with Ms. Carter, his lawyer, who was impressed by Julian's methodical approach. "Most clients let anger drive them," she remarked during one of their meetings. "But you, Julian, you're using it as fuel for precision." Together, they crafted a legal strategy that was airtight. Julian's financial audit had uncovered a few irregularities in the joint accounts he held with Annabella. These discrepancies became critical leverage points in their divorce proceedings. He also set up new accounts and rerouted his income, ensuring his financial stability post-divorce. Julian's private investigator continued to supply damning evidence of Annabella and Harold's affair. With each new piece of evidence, Julian felt a twinge of sorrow for the life he thought he had, but it was quickly overshadowed by a sense of vindication. This evidence was not just for the court, it was a confirmation of his own shattered reality. Meanwhile, Julian began to execute a series of calculated business moves against Harold. He used his influence and networks to subtly undermine Harold's position in their industry. Deals that were once sure things for Harold started falling through. Contacts and clients began to distance themselves. Julian watched as Harold's once thriving career began to crumble, all without a single public confrontation. At home, Julian continued to play the part of the unsuspecting husband. He engaged in mundane conversations with Annabella, all while knowing their marriage was hanging by a thread. Annabella, for her part, seemed blissfully unaware of the impending storm. She continued her routine, perhaps too consumed by her affair to notice the subtle changes in Julian. As the pieces of his plan fell into place, Julian felt a sense of empowerment. He was no longer the victim of their betrayal, he was now the architect of their reckoning. This sense of control was new to him, a stark contrast to the helplessness he had felt upon discovering the affair. The chapter culminates in a pivotal moment. Julian receives a call from his private investigator, a final piece of evidence that would be the last nail in the coffin for Annabella and Harold. It was a video, indisputable and damning. Julian watched it, his expression unreadable. This was it. The moment he had been meticulously planning for. With the video secured in his encrypted digital vault, Julian knew the time had come. The next step was to confront Annabella and Harold, to bring the war he had been silently waging into the open. The art of war, as he had learned, was not just about the battle, it was about knowing when to strike. And for Julian, that time was now. The dawn of confrontation had arrived. Julian, armed with his arsenal of evidence and legal strategies, was prepared for the final act of his meticulously crafted plan. The day was overcast, mirroring the storm that was about to unfold in the lives of the three intertwined souls. Julian arranged for a meeting at his home, a place that once symbolized their shared happiness but now stood as a silent witness to their fractured lives. He invited both Annabella and Harold, under the guise of discussing an important business matter. The air was thick with tension as they sat in the living room, the room where they had celebrated anniversaries and shared countless memories. "Thank you for coming," Julian began, his voice steady and devoid of the warmth it once held for these two people. "I have something important to discuss, concerning both of you." Annabella exchanged a nervous glance with Harold. Julian could almost see the unspoken words passing between them, the fear of exposure dawning in their eyes. Julian did not waste time with accusations or dramatic revelations. Instead, he methodically presented the evidence he had gathered, the photos, the messages, the video. With each piece of evidence, Annabella's face turned a shade paler, and Harold's confident demeanor crumbled. "I have known about your affair for some time now," Julian stated, his voice echoing in the now stifling room. "I have prepared accordingly." Annabella, tears streaming down her face, tried to speak, to offer some form of apology or explanation, but Julian was unmoved. Harold sat in stunned silence, his betrayal laid bare for all to see. Julian then outlined the terms of their divorce. He had ensured that Annabella would receive a settlement that, while legally fair, was far from the luxurious lifestyle she had grown accustomed to. For Harold, the consequences were even more severe. His career was in ruins, a result of Julian's subtle yet effective sabotage. Ms. Carter, who had been silently observing, interjected to clarify the legal implications of their actions and the solidity of Julian's case. She made it clear that any attempt to contest the terms would only lead to further public disgrace and legal defeat. The meeting ended with Annabella and Harold leaving the house, a house that once echoed with laughter but now resounded with the heavy silence of betrayal and loss. Julian watched them go, feeling a complex mix of victory and emptiness. He had won, but the cost was a life he once cherished. The chapter closes with Julian alone in the vastness of his home. The battle was over, but the war had taken its toll. He realized that his quest for justice had changed him. He was stronger, more resilient, but at the cost of a part of his soul that once believed in love and trust. As he stood by the window, watching the gray clouds drift aimlessly in the sky, Julian pondered his future. The path ahead was unclear, but he knew one thing for certain: the Julian who had entered this war was not the same man who had emerged from it. He was a man reshaped by the harsh lessons of betrayal and the unforgiving nature of revenge. In the wake of the tempest, Julian found himself in a world profoundly altered by his own design. The divorce proceedings were swift, the evidence he provided leaving no room for contest. Annabella and Harold, once central figures in his life, had become distant, almost spectral presences, fading into the background of his new reality. The house, once alive with shared dreams and laughter, now echoed with the hollow sound of solitude. Julian often found himself wandering its rooms, each corner a reminder of a past that seemed like a distant dream. The triumph of his strategy brought him no joy, only a lingering sense of emptiness. In the aftermath, Julian's business prowess grew stronger. His reputation in the corporate world, now tinged with a hint of ruthlessness, brought new opportunities and alliances. Colleagues and competitors alike viewed him with a mix of respect and caution. Julian's success was undeniable, but it was success born from the ashes of his personal life. As he immersed himself in work, Julian found solace in the clarity and predictability of business. Yet, in quiet moments, a profound realization began to dawn on him. His quest for justice, while successful, had cost him a part of his humanity. The warmth he once felt, the ability to trust and love, had been replaced by a guarded detachment. Julian started to engage in philanthropy, perhaps in an attempt to find redemption for the coldness that had taken root in his heart. He funded scholarships, supported art programs, and contributed to community projects. In these acts of generosity, he sought a semblance of the person he used to be, someone who believed in the goodness of people. One evening, as Julian attended a charity event he had sponsored, he encountered an old acquaintance who remarked, "You've changed, Julian. You're successful, more than ever, but you seem distant, unreachable." Julian pondered these words long after the event. In his room, surrounded by the trappings of his success, he reflected on his journey. Yes, he had changed. The betrayal had reshaped him, but did it define him? Was there a path back to the person he once was, or had he ventured too far? In this introspective solitude, Julian began to pen a journal. It started as a means to untangle his thoughts, but soon it became a narrative of his experience. He wrote about love, betrayal, revenge, and the cost of each. With every word, he sought understanding, not just of Annabella and Harold's actions, but also of his own. The final chapter of his journal mirrored the final chapter of this phase of his life. Julian decided to travel, to leave behind the familiar scenes that were now colored by the memories of his past. He sought new experiences, new people, and perhaps, in some distant land, a new understanding of himself. As Julian closed the door to his house, a chapter in his life concluded. He was not the same man who had opened that door years ago, full of hope and dreams. He was now a man tempered by life's harsh lessons, walking into a future where the possibility of redemption and self-discovery awaited. In the quiet closing of that door lay not just an end, but the subtle promise of a new beginning.